Welcome back to the third and final part of this mini-series, going over the speedruns of Deltarune chapters 1 and 2. I have already covered all of chapter 1 and the main route of chapter 2. Those videos cover some of the basics, so I recommend watching them first if you haven't already. The playlist will be on the info card in the top right. And just like last time, I will not cover most glitchless strats in this video since this series is meant to showcase the glitches and skips that runners use instead of the route as a whole. With that out of the way, I hope you're ready to have your mind blown one final time, whether you're already a fellow runner or not. In all Snowgrave categories, English is faster by about half a second due to less text boxes and the agree to all puzzle in the Cyberfield being barely faster. This time we do not need to do any RNG manipulation for the trash machine as we never fight Giga Queen, so we can start the run at any point no matter what. Of course, we have completion data so we can skip to the Dark World immediately. Everything is the same as main route up until the wear wires. In Glitched, it's recommended to do fight all strats so you get as much money as possible. In NMG and Glitchless you can do any strat, but if you do a strat that involves fighting, you get an extra stat increase, which will change the spam to Neophyte a little bit. Afterwards, in NMG and Glitchless, we want to unequip Chris's Amber cards. We only need the Mecha Saber, so this is all we'll need to sell. We don't do this in Glitched because we never gain access to Sweet Cabin Cake's shop. In Glitched, you wanna defeat these werewolves by doing Defend, Defend, Pacify twice, and these tasks by doing Soft Voice Defend and Spare Defend. Bosom is in fact still faster. For NMG and Glitchless, the strat here is the same as main route, except you don't buy bagels. Just go to Sweet Captain Cakes, finish the fight, sell Chris's armor, buy the Mecha Saber and proceed. In Glitched though, you can do something entirely different. You wanna save and reload here, then do a chain of wrong drops up to here where you go down to 1 or 2 hits away from death, and then wrong grab down to Sweet Captain Cakes. Die. Afterwards do the normal strat. When the fight ends, hold it down and you will walk out of the room on the very first frame. This is why we died the first time, because this wouldn't be possible otherwise. What this did was unlock the SRN actions, but not progress the story. So if you were to walk back in, the battle would start again. This is important because if you go back to the main room, Captain and KK are still here and the force field is still up. Now it's time for arguably the worst part of Snowgrave Glitched. You wanna go right and spare 8 encounters. You can do either these tasks, which are slightly faster but give less money, these 0-0 coons, which are slower but more lenient on money, or a combination of both, which is what most people do. 8 encounters is barely enough to reach 1997 Dark Dollars. You can probably tell what's coming up next. With the Bagel Overflow glitch, you can access some choices from the rest of the game, including some Chapter 1 ones too, but most importantly, you can get the choice to buy the Thorn Ring. By overflowing the force field instead of the door, interacting with KK, then answering the tracer to buy the bagels, preferably with don't buy so we don't spend any money, and interacting with Cap'n at the same time, you can get the game stuck in a practically infinite loop of spawning choicers and progressing to the next one in the code. By pure coincidence, the Thorn Ring Choicer is pretty close to the Bagels Choicer in the code, and it also doesn't do anything like crash the game or softlock when you answer it, so you can get to it from here and immediately buy the Thorn Ring. Right after, you can get Yeg as well for comedic effect. After we get it, we clear all the text so we still have a choice up with no text box. Finally, we can use it on the door to warp to the trash zone. We can't go to the mansion directly because, well, we still have to Snowgrave Birdly. Back to that when the routes converge though. Let's return to NMG for a bit. For the first Birdly fight, we want to fight with everyone 3 times and pacify on the 4th turn to end the battle as fast as possible. This is only possible when Birdly's cart is smoking. If it isn't, you can use a Root Buster on the same turn as pacify to deal the necessary damage. Just like in main route, when entering the trash zone, we are given the wrong warp state unless we enter through the fast travel door. It is optimal to keep wrong warp state until you get Noel. Afterwards, go back left to Ice Shock the first enemy. If you have the Thorn Ring, equip it now. If you didn't keep the wrong warp state here, you can save and reload to get it back. Since we're gonna do the same menuing many times in the run, there's something I have to explain. There is a bug called act sliding, which applies to both chapters but is the most prevalent during Snowgrave runs. In battles, if you press a direction and confirm on the same frame, the direction will be processed twice. So for example, if you're on Noelle's fight button, then press right and Z at the same time, you will end up at heal prayer. You can probably see how this gets really annoying, because if you accidentally do the defend ice shock inputs too fast, you have a chance to act slide, which places your cursor on sleep mist, which can abort the route entirely and pretty much kill the run. On the flip side, in a task setting, or if you really wanna practice this for some reason, you can ice shock very quickly by doing left and Z in one frame to defend, then right, down and Z in one frame to go from fight to ice shock. Wrong up all the way back here and freeze these enemies. This chain is called Snowy City. Afterwards, wrong up back to the room you met Noelle and proceed from there. For beginners, I would highly recommend grabbing the pink ribbon in Snowgrave, especially for the Spam the Neo fight. It only loses a couple seconds, but the bigger grazing area helps a lot. For the ambulances, if you don't have Thorn Ring, you can do a fight Ice Shock, and make sure you hit the crit, otherwise you lose a turn. Then finally defend Ice Shock. Alternatively, you can defend Ice Shock on the first turn, which is about a second faster but makes the grazing much tighter. For the Virovirokun and Ambulance, we want Chris to fight the Ambulance and Noelle to fight the Virovirokun. Then defend Ice Shock twice. After getting the freeze ring, it's recommended to equip it here at the force field while waiting for this cutscene to queue up. In Glitched, that's all the enemies you have to freeze. The rest are only required for Spamton to give you the Thorn Ring, which you already have. You can regain Wrong Grip state here and do mouse 3 skip, which saves about 10 seconds. Make a beeline for Birdly. Defend until you have enough TP, then make sure no one will shed a tear for him. In NMG, make sure you do not do mouse 3 skip, because you have to backtrack later and will soft lock, since the bridge isn't up and you can't trigger the cutscene from the right. Freeze the Virovirokuns, the Werewires, the Ambulances, the Virovirokuns and Task. It's slightly better to go down and encounter these mice first, because if you get the other ones, they'll be in your way later. Freeze the pop-ups and the mouse. Go back and freeze the remaining mice. Get the Thorn Ring and go back to Birdly. Alternatively, you can do a stupid strat called Snowy City 2, which no one goes for, but I'm putting it here because it saved like 7 seconds. If you freeze both the mice from earlier and get Chris and Noelle to one hit from that, you can die to the pop-ups and respawn here due to the autosave to get Wrong Warp state. Freeze the pop-ups like usual and Wrong Warp back here to get a Thorn Ring. Then Wrong Warp back to Birdly. This is a huge chain, it's difficult because you can very easily die and it's all around not a pleasant strat in my opinion. Go into the mansion where you regain Wrong Warp state and you can use it here to save a little bit of time. The next Wrong Warp is buffered, meaning as long as you hold left on the frame the room changes, you will Wrong Warp. So don't do that because you'll end up here. You can open and close the menu to make mouse wheel slow down here due to a little oversight. Make sure the menu is actually visible before closing it, otherwise it won't work. So you can't press menu and cancel at the same time, for example. Here is another horrible part of the run. The Pipis maze movement is very precise and almost pixel perfect. There are a million ways to go through it, but the fastest one is to move right for 2 or 3 frames at the start, then make a sharp left turn, then a sharp up turn. The strat for going right for 2 frames is called UPS or Ultra Pipis Skip. So we named the strat for going right for 3 frames FedEx. I hope you get the joke. Hitting a Pipis loses about 7 seconds. Go up and left here. If you tap up for just a frame or 2, you'll be put in a spot where you don't lose your speed and you also don't hit any Pipis. You only have to despawn the first one. For Task Manager, the optimal strat is Roar Defend, then Defend, Pacify Task Manager. Go up, hope you get the funny 1 in 20 chance Ralsei sprite change here, it doesn't actually do anything useful, then proceed forward to spam the Neo. This fight varies depending on your equipment and stats, but the general idea is to defend or fight on turn 1, then do as many X slashes as possible to end the fight before the ultimate attack. The pink ribbon makes a big difference here, especially if you're not confident in your grazing. This is considered one of the hardest fights in speedrun so far due to the damage and TP requirements. Grazing the enraged version of the phone hands attack is especially important because you get an insane amount of TP. After you defeat him, just spam Axe until the fight is over. In the light world, everything is the exact same. Well, apart from the fact that Birdley's fucking dead. Despite the fact that the hospital cutscene does progress your Snowgrave route story flag, it's not actually required to complete the route yet. We obviously don't know, but for now, it's not required for the speedrun either. Make a beeline for Chris's house, wash your hands, come back like nothing happened, and end time on Toriel's final text box. And that about covers the Deltarune Chapter 2 Snowgrave speedruns. But of course, there's some extra funny stuff. Not as much as last time, but I think you will still find it very, very interesting. Firstly, version 1.09, which I said has one use in Snowgrave. That is the fact that you only have to freeze one enemy. If you play Snowgrave glitched normally up until you meet Noelle, then go forward, unequip her armor and give her the Tornado for the least defense possible and die to this Virovirokuni, you will spawn one room forward. What you want to do now is get past these enemies and trigger the nice teamwork text. This is the only cutscene that checks if you're still on the Snowgrave path, so what you can do now is go back, optimally by wrong whipping, to that Virovirokun and freeze it. That is it. Now you can literally just go to Birdley and Snowgrave him immediately. A funny side effect of this is the main route version of the city is still active, so the cutscenes and puzzles are still here, which means you absolutely wanna do mouse 3 skip because it saves the usual 50 seconds. Also, Smart Race will play here as well, which, needless to say, doesn't fit the vibe at all. Also, this is the category with the hardest spam to neophyte in the entire game since you don't get any stat boosts or weapons. Secondly, I want to present to you the tension bit. This item might sound useless, and it absolutely is, but it can have one single use in Snowgrave. Derailing to get it loses almost 10 seconds, but here's how it can be used to maybe save that time back. In the second Birdley fight, he will always use this attack on the first turn. On the second turn, he has a 2 in 3 chance to repeat it. If you're unlucky, you will get either the Tornado or the Papers attacks, which are slower. However, if you use Tension Bit on the first turn, you can use the Snowgrave spell the second time around, which saves about the same amount of time as getting the item, so you essentially don't lose or gain any time. But if you don't think you're lucky, it actually saves just under a second over getting the slower attacks. It's a stupid strat, but I just couldn't not mention it. With that, I've covered everything I wanted to with this little series. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, and of course I'm open to any feedback in the comments. Once again, I will leave the speedrun.com page and the community's Discord server in the description. Subscribe and look at my other socials if you want to. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you when chapters 3 and 4 release.